whatever experience you had in the past. And just try to, through listening, or if you want to join, those of you who already know this mantra, I invite you to join me. Through the sounds and the vibrations, I want you to connect to whatever there is, if you have any psychedelic experience that you've had, or meditative experience that you've had. Then
Galia, se escuchó un poco cortado, no te quise interrumpir, pero se escuchó un poquito cortado.
Ok, vale.
Yo creo que
Ahora también cuando hablo, ¿también se corta?
No.
Ahora no.
But it was a little cut. I think that
the internet has its own volition. Sometimes it has its own volition. Okay. So coming out from the mantra, I want you to take this moment, and if you can, if you want, if you wish, I would like you to write in the chat, just in a word, maybe a word that describes something about the experience, or whatever kind of a connection to any altered states that you might have been experiencing during this time. It would be nice to hear the different sensations and words. Okay, so during the time that if you want to share something in the chat, I will go into details about our journey together. I remind you that this is recorded, but you are very welcome to ask questions in the chat during the talk or after the talk. So everything that is unclear, please just write it down in the chat. But remember that this meeting is recorded. So if these are personal experiences you would not want to go online with, please remember that this is not the place to share them, okay? Because this is going to be available widely on social media and so on. So why psychedelic as spiritual practice? I want to start by saying some things about authoritarian and non-authoritarian ways of, or settings of using psychedelics, or in general of spirituality. And I think it's very important to understand that I do not in any way see myself as a shaman or any authority, any psychedelic authority over any one of your experiences. I am not bringing a tribal or indigenous knowledge from a place that I've learned and I'm going to teach you the system. This is not the purpose of this journey that we're going to do together. I personally have arrived to this marvelous world of psychedelics after a very long Buddhist practice and a very thorough Buddhist practice. I started my spiritual path when I was 20, and I've passed the 6 years between 20 and 26 in very, very intensive Buddhist practices, including months on silent retreats in Asia. So the initial parts of my spiritual journey have started from the practice of meditation and of not consuming any mind-altering substances for many years. And starting from that point, I later on reached and opened myself up to the world of psychedelics, even though my first doctrine have told me this is forbidden. And I think this is very interesting because I think this is something that will accompany us in this course, that my encouragement for your personal use or your personal inquiry along these lines of altered states would constantly be one of putting a question mark on any dogma or any system of knowledge that you are learning from outside. So the first thing, the first principle that we will constantly follow is how to bring back the sovereignty over the experience, how to bring back the ability to know and the ability to touch what is true through direct experience. And I think much of this course would be a very deep inquiry with different languages, with different tools into this exact movement in our life, whether it's through meditation or through the use of mind-altering substances. And I want to just say in brackets, this course will only talk about classic psychedelics. So the world of mind-altering substances is very, very wide. And today in the field, for me, there is a lot of confusion using this word psychedelics. When I say this word psychedelics, I mean a very, very little family of substances, which include mostly psilocybin, DMT, and mescaline. These are the principal. After that, we have, of course, LSD, that for me, for us, is part of the traditional or like classical definition of psychedelic. And other more new or revelations or more recent substances like 5-MeO, DMT. But I'm speaking mostly about this very little family. In my course, I'm not speaking not about MDMA and not about ketamine as psychedelic substances. For me, these substances are not classic psychedelics, and the way I'm going to formulate our relationship with the psychedelic sphere, for me, it's important to make this distinction. So I would like to start by looking with you at the very structure of the course. Okay. So why are we going, or how are we going to do each of the meetings, and through the structure of the course to say something about what does it mean to look at psychedelics as a spiritual practice. So Karina, if you can, give me the ability to share screen. Here I have it. Great. Thank you. And no, now it's sharing your screen. Karina, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Where are you?
I need to be the host, I guess.
Yeah. Let me. Here you are.
Thank you, darling.
Perfect.
Okay, so we are starting the course or this journey of looking at psychedelic as a spiritual practice from a very basic introduction to the world of mindfulness. And this is because the way I experience, the way I live this journey is through the development of what is called today in the West mindfulness. I personally do not like this word so much because I think mindfulness is a confusing word. When I try the kind of quality that I'm trying to capture is more, I would say, beingfulness or awakefulness. I would say this is a better word, but because mindfulness had become so popular, I cannot just write awakefulness and psychedelics because it would not be clear, okay? But when we talk about mindfulness, we talk exactly about this ability to become present, to become awake in our daily life and in our spiritual life. This field of mindfulness had become really huge in the last decade, and we are going to touch, the first meeting of the course is going to touch this wide field of mindfulness as it is today, with a very strong focus on what is the way that we can use these different languages or these different methods or these different ways of seeing what is mindfulness. How do we cultivate presence in the moment? How can we look at this from the lens of our own development, of our own ability to, again, trust our experience and become fully present and fully awake to our experience as it is. We are going to work on a personal mindfulness practice as the foundation to all of our future exploration, because, again, as we say, the basis of our dialogue during the course says that your experience is the thing that you need to learn from. And the ways or the different constructions you will build, the different interpretations you will build around your experience, this is something that we will skillfully explore. What is beneficial? What kind of, again, ways of looking at the experience, different settings to come to the experience, first of all, of meditation. First of all, of sitting quietly without any mind-altering substances, meeting your own body and mind with its repetitive patterns of being, okay? So the first meeting would really be a very pragmatic and a very direct presentation of this field of mindfulness as the basis of our joint experiment or a joint exploration. The second meeting will give a general, and I have to say, every one of the meetings in this course could be a course by itself, okay? And maybe even a year of studying. So I feel that this course is a little bit like tasting and touching upon different like spectrum of the rainbow. And in each thing is more, in each meeting is aimed more to raise questions in you and to make your curiosity bigger than to, again, give you the answer and tell you this is the right way to do it. No, it's kind of an opening to many different ways of how to look at what does it mean for me to practice mindfulness? How do I do it in my day-to-day life? How do I do it in my body? Okay. So the second meeting will be an introduction to psychedelics and altered states. And in this meeting, we will talk a lot about the concept of altered states and, again, how psychedelics, or what kind of altered states psychedelic usually induces. So this meeting is really kind of a mapping of the psychedelic sphere, a lot of emphasis on what are the real dangers versus the things that are not dangerous around psychedelics, but maybe the war on drugs, the propaganda of the war on drugs had taught us to be dangerous, and we are afraid of the wrong things. We are going to speak about psychedelics and community, how and why do we need community when we choose to do psychedelic spiritual practice. Again, it relates to the dangers of psychedelics, and again, we will touch a lot on this concept of gaining knowledge. Okay, what does it mean to gain knowledge from altered states born out of psychedelics? What kind of knowledge is born there? And what is the dangers of holding this knowledge as truth? We will talk a lot about, again, authoritarian uses of psychedelics, which are not bad or good, but they have to be seen through this lens. So the medical uses of psychedelics as authoritarian ways to use psychedelics and suggestibility that psychedelics are creating to influence people to buy certain ideas or certain concepts or certain theories, okay? And in the same way, looking at shamanic practices as authoritarian ways to, again, make another person believe or buy into a whole system of worldview and concepts and we will just highlight the way it functions and why and how should we be aware of it when we choose psychedelics to be part of our own spiritual practice. We will consider where in our life have we used psychedelics in an authoritarian way? When have we been in authoritarian settings? And how much power did we have to agree or disagree with the authority, again, whether it was a shaman or a doctor or a sitter or a trip sitter or a retreat guide, okay? How much did we have the ability to dialogue with this authority about the meaning of our experience and the way to handle our experience and so on and so forth. And we will talk about psychedelic practices, about opening to the weird, the importance of being weird. This is a very, very favorite topic of mine. The third meeting would focus on compassion. So I think this is maybe one of the most important issues and kind of points that I would like to touch upon this course. Today, a lot of the psychedelic advertisement speaks about the kind of beautiful and shining parts of bliss and unity with the cosmos and so on, and relatively little are talking about the horrifying and impossible and like so difficult states that are born out of these experiences, and how much these difficulties, these pains, these ways of going into the depth of the human suffering, how much these are extremely important parts of the psychedelic spiritual practice. And this meeting, and also, by the way, of the meditation practice. I mean, if you choose to do, anyone here who have chosen to do a long silent retreat, let's say more than 4 days, knows that part of the deal is to deal with pain, is to deal with suffering, is to see the suffering in a very, very raw and direct way. We will speak about changing our perspective towards suffering on the spiritual path. This is the meaning of the third meeting. What does it mean to see suffering and pain as necessary and central components in our way to integrate a spiritual practice in our life? How can we embrace them? How can we see them as opportunity to develop compassion? And by the way, we will also talk about the message, the social message that constantly tells us that it's not okay to suffer. We'll talk about pathologizing suffering, how the medical model is a danger in this sense, and why is the medical model a danger to the psychedelic experience, why there is incompatibility to see suffering as pathology when we choose to use psychedelics. Why is this by itself a danger? Okay. So the fourth meeting will be an introduction, a very brief introduction to a modality that I am very connected to and I've been doing my PhD on and I've been teaching ever since, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. We will explore a little bit the basic concept of acceptance and commitment therapy and its application to the psychedelic spiritual practice. We would look at this kind of theory or conceptual model as another way to look at our spiritual practice, a way which is less charged with religious and maybe things that puts people off from the spiritual world and really translate what I feel and think it means to have a spiritual practice into a very direct and accessible terms. So this would be the fourth meeting, Learning Act, kind of introduction to ACT. The fifth meeting, again, a topic I love a lot, would deal with the concept of non-self. This, I think, is one of the hearts of what I've been doing in my life for the last 20 years. And I think both spiritual paths, whether it's meditation or psychedelics, constantly point out to the essential and the really core challenge of changing our perspective of the self, changing the experience, changing the actual way we live in our bodies and mind, and how do we relate to this as non-self or what one of my favorite teachers, Thich would call interbeing. So not a separate and constant self, but a flux of interdependency, constantly changing. And in this meeting, we will explore how both ways are contributing and how both paths can help complement each other when we want to touch or when we want to expand into this altered state in which we have access to what it means non-self or anatta in the Buddhist, in the Pali language. Yeah. So how can we integrate them in a wise way? How can we take from both parts of our spiritual practice in order to constantly integrate this deep sense of connectedness and flux into our daily lives, into our relationships, into the way we act in the world? The sixth meeting would deal with integration. So it would speak mostly about psychedelic integration, but it's also very relevant to each and every one of you who is doing very intensive meditative practices. So again, if you're doing long silent retreats, if you're doing solitude, the challenge of integration is very similar in many ways. And we will be talking about what it means to have integration when we are coming back from the altered state. So we will emphasize again and again that going into altered states is one part of the process and a very important one, but there is another part which is just as important, which is integrating what we have gained, what we have learned, what we have experienced into our daily lives. And if we're not doing this work, if we're not committed to the process of integration, it doesn't matter how many experiences we will have, because they will not have a very valuable and profound impact on our lives. So the last meeting will be really, again, practical, putting a lot of emphasis on what kind of techniques and ways we can use, what kind of practices we want to bring into our lives in order to integrate the altered state that we have experienced and lived into whatever aspect of our life that we need and we want. Again, whether it's physical, whether it's movement, sexuality, whether it's relationships, whether it's the way we are at work, the way we express ourselves, and a very wide and integrative way of looking at it. Okay, I'm going to exit the screen. Nice. Few more words about the retreat. So after the course, after the online course, which will be 7 meetings, I will be offering a presential retreat here in Catalonia. And it's a very short retreat. It's from Thursday to Saturday. No, from Friday to Sunday, I'm sorry. And the retreat will not include any mind-altering substances for those of you who are interested. I'm sorry, not this time. And it is because I believe that we should and can be doing a lot of work through many other various practices, mostly yoga, movement, vocal work, and work in the group, in order to become more skillful in identifying and going into altered states and coming back from them into our normal day-to-day way of being, and becoming very skillful in this cruising or crossing between these dimensions. And the whole purpose of the retreat would be gaining, again, in a dialogical and communal way, we will be working together as a group, gaining a new language to think and formulate and address what does it mean to go into altered states. When in our lives are we going into altered states? It doesn't only happen in meditation and in psychedelics. It happens in so many different ways, and there are so many subtle ways that we can start to identify this shift of consciousness into altered states. And what we will be doing in the retreat is that we will become very skillful in identifying, talking about the state, going into the states together without the aid, without needing to take a substance only, yeah? Which again, when we take a substance, we enter into a relationship with a non-human being. And this is amazing, and these relationships, we will be talking a lot about it. These relationships can be very, very, very meaningful to our life and to accompany us in many ways. I personally have a very deep and beautiful relationship with mushrooms, with ganja, with cannabis, with ayahuasca. All of these relationships are nourishing me and accompanying me in my life. But the purpose of the retreat, because most of you, or many of you, again, luckily I'm living in Spain, and here a personal use of these substances is legal, so I can speak freely and openly about these things. But many of the people that are interested and will come to the retreat, I guess, have some kind of experience, whether in meditation or in psychedelics. And so going into these states is something that you have experienced and did in groups. And I would like to, again, help you sharpen and develop your skills to be more and more, to have more and more proficiency, more and more ability to go into these states, to identify the states, so that when you will take these mind-altering substances, you will have better skills, you will have better ability to navigate, you will be very much more conscious of the different ways that you can deal with the situation, whether it's through breath that we will work through a lot in the yoga, whether it's through movement that we will be doing in shaking that can change the way the body feels, whether it's through vocal work, which is one of the most important things in the psychedelic practice in all the cultures it had ever been part of. And again, we will be talking a lot about medicalization of psychedelics and how medicalization of psychedelics is a danger to psychedelic spirituality, because it takes out many of the most important context and tools that have always in all cultures been part of this use. So singing to another person, singing together under the influence of psychedelics have always been part of these practices, and we will kind of reclaim it together. We will be singing together, we will be doing strange vocal work together in order, again, to sharpen and to develop our ability to have more ways to navigate and to make benefit of these altered states. So this was this was a lot in a little time. I can speak about it for hours more, but I think it's fine to stop here and to take questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Galia. Yeah, I think that maybe we can start the answering questions time. And well, the invitation is to just write in the chat wherever you have a question to Galia about the content of the course, also, you know, whatever you need to be clarified. And I can read the questions to Galia so you can respond it. You can either put it in English or in Spanish. Both of them, you can write them. Yeah.
You are also, by the way, invited to ask any question that is not related to the course or to the content of the course, but it's just around these topics and it's interesting for you to explore.
This is a good question. The retreat and the course, whether it's in English or in Spanish, and I can answer this question that it will be in both languages. We have interpretation as we are doing it now. So yeah, it is in both languages. And how long is each meeting? Each meeting is 2 hours. Each meeting online is 2 hours long. what are the expectations of the students in the course, work-wise or otherwise?
So just to clarify, Susan, do you mean what do we expect the students? What are expected of the students? You can do like this with your hand. Yeah, this is what you mean? Okay, so this course basically is for the general audience, okay? Which means there are no expectations. It's a general kind of introductory course, and there will be a lot of things offered. I will be offering lots of practices that you can be doing at home. I will be offering reading materials. I will be offering podcasts or things to listen to, okay? A lot of resources. But each and every one of the people that will be participating in this course is totally free to do it in his own or her own way, to take as much as they would like from that. So nothing is expected, not in terms of reporting, not in terms of, again, you're not required to read anything. It's not an academic course. It's a course that is really for me, the basic, the essence of this course is to serve those who are interested in taking psychedelics seriously or at all, to start to try to take psychedelics as a spiritual practice. Or for these people, this course, I think it would be very suitable. Or for people who are just interested in this subject and curious, and want to hear, again, we are constantly bombarded in our world with I would say the campaign, the advertisement campaign of psychedelic as a medical intervention, right? This is something that had been happening for the last 10 years, and a lot of money and a lot of effort had been put into formulating psychedelics in medical terms and medicalize the use of psychedelics. This is something that we see very strongly in the past 10 years. And I personally think that this is a very narrow and inadequate cultural setting or a way to look at psychedelics. And this course is a way to present an alternative conceptual way to formulate what can psychedelics be for you or for me, and what could psychedelics be in our society. Yeah. Does this answer your question? Yeah. Will there be more courses in the future? I don't know. The future is yet to come. At the moment, this is the course that I'm offering. Who knows if I guess that we'll probably be having some other kind of course in the next year, but not this year. There is nothing else planned around these topics. Any more questions about psychedelics, meditation, the intersection between them? Things that you would like me to address more? Feel free. Okay, what do you think about the use of microdosing? So personally, I think microdosing is an interesting exploration. And maybe we will even have some time in the course to touch upon the concept of placebo, right? And again, things that have to do with non-material effects of things on our body, the way that the mind, knowing that you have taken some kind of medicine, whatever it would be, creates differences and changes the actual metabolism or like the actual material of your body. So I think microdosing is interesting, and I think many times people, again, need to have their own deep inquiry into that. It's not something that I personally would recommend necessarily. And definitely, I would think that it's important to have a full experience before starting the microdosing. Yeah. Because again, we will be talking a lot about this concept, or like formulating the work with psychedelics in terms of relationships, which is something that, as you know, specifically, I'm very, very deeply into this idea. I think that this idea is very beneficial when we work with plants or with fungi. So I think that, again, in the sense of microdosing, it's completely different to microdose after you did a full dose of whatever it is, whether it's LSD or whether it's mushrooms or or even mescaline. It's very different to microdose after a full effect. Then again, try to use microdosing in the more what we see modern way, what we see now, that microdose is like kind of pushed and advertised as a way to enhance productivity or to make you less depressed. You know, these kind of formulations, I feel, again, that they may have a potential danger when we really want to think about what is the psychedelic potential. And I mean, again, I think that it's very personal and very different from one person to another. But of course, microdosing can sometimes be beneficial. And in the context of spiritual practice, I think it's very interesting in general, because again, for me, for example, the following few weeks, for example, after a very intense ayahuasca ceremony, right? All my meditations are different, right? And I am carrying with me, even though I'm not drinking the drink, I'm carrying with me a certain kind of presence of this experience, this medicine, this substance, whatever you want to call it, and it stays with me. So potentiating it, and I think this is a very important thing, potentiating this presence, and this is something that we're going to work a lot on, how to potentiate this presence that you had when you were drinking this thing, right? Can be done through microdosing. Of course, if you take just a spoon, or if you take just a microdose of mushrooms, there is something that is activating this presence, but there are many other ways to activate this presence, right? And I think it's very important to kind of open up to this range, to this variety of other ways in which we can come back and potentiate the presence of this thing within us. Yeah. More questions.
I want also to add that we are giving all the information in PDF, and I just posted in the chat the information about the training. It is in English and Spanish, so you can download it. Yeah. Then it's another question.
So I have a question here. Do you feel like being present and doing a spiritual meditation practice during an expanded state via psychedelic will help strengthen or anchor the practice without the use of psychedelic? Can psychedelic be used as a training? Again, I'm not sure I understood this question. Let me see if I did. So if a meditation practice can help one while you are on psychedelics, this is the first part, right? Do you want to explain in your voice, Suzanne?
I have to reactivate her.
Okay, so while you're doing it, I will just answer the question from Loreto that asked me if during the course, it's in Spanish, but the question is if during the course it's a must to have a macrodosis, like a full dose of psychedelic to actually do the practice and theory. So no, it is not. Some people would take this course without consuming psychedelics because they are curious, because again, they would like to hear about these topics, but they're still not ready to have this experience, or they don't have the right set and settings to do that. Some people would come to the course with a question mark, should they be doing psychedelics? And maybe during the course, they will understand that the answer is no. Yeah. And we will also be talking about the psychedelic dimension of our lives that does not necessarily require the use of psychedelics, but we can have like kind of a psychedelic inspiration. Okay. So no, you're not obliged. You do not have to consume psychedelics during this course. Susanna, did you?
I can't activate her.
Cannot. Okay, let me. Yeah, I can do it. Okay.
You are the one that is leading the host.
Yeah, here. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi. Yeah. So my question has to do with, say you're working on a certain practice, or you have a certain meditation that you've been doing without any substances. I guess my question is, from your experience, do you feel like if you do that practice or that meditation with a psychedelic and are present with that process afterwards, do you feel like that practice can become more anchored in your day-to-day? Or you can maybe go into a greater depth with that practice?
Okay, lovely question. Thank you very much. I like this question a lot. And I would like to say some things about it in different levels, okay? The first thing I would like to say is that in really full-on psychedelic experiences, most of the time, you would not be able to choose your practice exactly. Again, if you take a very minimal dose, if you're doing, again, the low doses of the psychedelic realms, yes, it is a possibility. And yes, we could talk about how to do it or what can it bring back to your life, yeah? But it's important to understand, especially if you do not have a lot of experience with psychedelics, or you just took lower doses, that many of the psychedelic experiences are kind of a choice to go into a relationship with a non-human teacher in which you do not choose the practice that you're doing, because you're being seeing visions, or you're being, going through physical sensations, or you're going through this and that thing. And usually in the first years of this practice, until you, again, gain a lot of skillfulness, you are not very able to navigate and choose your own practice during the trip, yeah? This changes and varies from different psychedelics. I mean, with LSD, usually it's more manageable and people can more use it in a way that they can control and choose the practice that they're doing. With ayahuasca, for example, usually it's not the case. For most people, it's not the case. For some people, again, it is the case, and they drink ayahuasca and they can choose the practice or the meditation they've been doing at home every day and do it during their session. But again, it's important to kind of open up also to this possibility of lack of control as kind of an inherent part of the psychedelic commitment or the psychedelic experience. The second part of my answer is yes, simply yes, because if you've been practicing something for many years, many times when you choose to practice the same thing with the aid, with the support, or in the context of a psychedelic experience, you have access to other potentials that to other ways of learning. We will be talking a lot about learning theories during the course that are not accessible to you when you are locked in your habitual patterns of the day-to-day, the mundane mind. Yeah, it's very similar to, again, other ways of gaining altered states, whether it's fasting, dancing, swirling. Yeah, something about going into altered states allows different levels of learning. So yes, definitely many people who are, for example, meditators. I've been working a lot with very old-time meditators who choose, after 20 years of Buddhist practice, they choose to do psychedelics. And this is fascinating. I have a lot of these processes that I'm accompanying. And this is fascinating to see how these people that have been working so hard for so many years on theoretical concepts suddenly have a kind of a direct access to experiential levels of things they already know. Yeah. And so definitely the answer to the question that you're asking is yes, sometimes definitely yes. And it's something, again, that we will explore around dosage and how do we use it and what is psychedelic, what are psychedelics, different ways of using psychedelics to do this kind of things and to amplify or to anchor our spiritual practice in our life. Definitely.
There's another question, Loreto. The idea is a lucid experience or like just approximate to that?
I'm not sure I understand the word lucid in this context. Can you explain to me, Karina or Loreto?
Lucid is just like, you know, when you're awake, you're lucid. You are...
Yeah, I know it in dreams, but I'm not sure what it means in person.
Maybe we can put Loreto. You are the host. And
here.
Explain and to remind that we have like around 5 minutes more of questions and answers. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Loreto, estás activada, puedes compartir un poquito a qué te refieres.
Me refería, es que recordaba como los sueños lúcidos, donde uno puede, siendo que está como en otro nivel, estar consciente, digamos, dirigir el proceso.
Okay. Ahora entiendo. Okay, muchas gracias. Voy a traducir yo. So Loreto asked me if I'm referring to experiences which are like lucid dreaming, in which during the experience itself, you know that you're dreaming and you can navigate the experience. So I think the answer to this question is no. There are not many similarities between the experience of lucid dream and the kind of way that I would kind of offer you to explore in your psychedelic journey. And this has to do with the fact that psychedelics are not dissociative substances. So it's very important. There are substances in which we are being transmitted to another world. For example, salvia dividendum. Yeah, when we smoke salvia, we are in a dreamlike state, meaning that we have no idea where we are, what is our reality, and so on. This is not the case with psychedelics. Psychedelics do not function like that. Even in the strong doses, in which we can definitely be on different realms. For example, if we smoke DMT, there is something very different when we come back to our normal consciousness. There is something very different in the integration. And again, there is a wide spectrum between this extreme not being present, which sometimes comes in the extreme of peak experiences with psychedelics, and a whole range of other influences that psychedelics create, which are much more subtle, manageable, which we can definitely work with in many levels that still meet with the material or mental reality that is our day-to-day life. So I think it's important to make this distinction. And thank you, Loreto, for the question. Okay, another question. At the time, will the online meeting take place and will they be recorded? If someone can't make it, like Karina.
Yes. All the sessions will be recorded. Also, it will be hung in a learning platform. So whenever you want to see it again, you can. If you lose one, it is there, and the material is there for you for long period. I would not say all your life. Maybe you don't know what happens in life, but yes, that it will be there for you to access. Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other?
Between the time we will be between 7 p.m. 9 p.m. in the afternoon. Spain afternoon.
Okay. In the case that there is no other question, I would like to make use of the last 3 minutes that we have to make an invitation and open up some questions for you, whether you are going on a spiritual path, whether you are doing psychedelic exploration, whether you are doing exploration through meditation. And I would like to, maybe if you want, you are willing, you can close your eyes, you can place one hand on your heart, and connect to your own being, connect to your own body. Take a few deep breaths. And I would like to kind of bring to life this question of what does my heart yearn for? What does my heart yearn for? And I want you to pay attention to all the different answers that are coming up, to all the different colors, emotions, physical sensations that are present. And I want you to try and see if you're willing to trust your experience as a guide in this path. And then I want you to ask yourself, do I want, am I willing to go beyond this prison of repetition? Do I have the courage to break patterns, to see reality differently, to let go of what I think is constant and unchanging? And I want you to find your own voice in this moment and to raise your voice and maybe to make a sound and maybe to say a word, repeat it. Maybe to start a song that you really love and came out in your mind right now. Raise your voice, open your mouth, and please let your voice out. It doesn't have to be verbal, it can just be a sigh or any kind of other voice that you want to make. But make your own voice heard. And then open your eyes slowly, come back to this joined reality. Thank you very much for your presence and your questions. And I hope to see you in Catalonia.
Thank you very much, Galia. Beautiful. Thank you for your sharings and your knowledge, your wise knowledge. And thank you everyone that was here today to share this online space that is really beautiful. And Patty, thank you so much for the translation. Hope to continue sharing with all of you. And yeah, see you soon.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you so much for making this possible. Gracias, gracias, gracias.
And whatever information you want, you can write us to our email. Also, I have sent the PDFs and we are completely available to answer another questions or yeah. I'm putting the email in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.